First things first, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm having a little hangover and I'm a little bit tired, but I'm really good. I'm happy.
Okay. Before we talk about your latest releases, I'd like to go back a little bit. Do you remember the first time you fell in love with a song or an album?
Yeah, definitely. The first track I was really in love with, it was Pina
Okay.
from Sunnery James and Ryan Marciano. No, it was the Sunnery James Ryan Marciano remix, and the original was Dior Styles. And that was one of those tracks I fell in love with, and that was one of the reasons I was like, I want to make music as well on the computer, because I always played in bands. I was a rock drummer all my life, so I thought, okay, my band split up, and I was like kind of fucked by that. So then I heard that track live, and I went to my first house party, and then I thought, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. And then I had tracks like Phasing from Dirty South, and I get so euphoric, and Swedish House Mafia tracks like the older ones. I think those are amazing.
And you say you started out as a drummer.
Yeah.
What got you into music? Was music always a big part of your life?
I never did school. I quit when I was 12. My father was a famous drummer here in Holland.
Okay.
So for me, it was like natural. I went into music. There was no other option. Not because my parents wanted to, but because I'm gonna make music, you know.
Right.
And I was behind the drum set when I was 8.
Okay.
I started in a band when I was 10, and started my own music academy when I was 15. So it wasn't like a weird thing to be in music for me.
And looking back now, then and what you've been producing now, do you hear elements or things of what you were doing?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that if they know I'm a drummer, and it's so much easier to get the drums going. And I'm like, yeah, but it's all like 4 to the floor, and the harder parts is in the synths. But it definitely helps with DJing, because I can like beat match in like 2 seconds. It's not that hard anymore with the Pioneers though.
Sure.
But even though if you don't give me the displays, I will get it right within 2 seconds, because I'm like really focused on it matches and stuff like that. But with producing, of course, it's like a more musical ear, but I don't know the difference between if I didn't have any history with music. So for me, it's like really natural that I have like a little bit of music talent, hopefully.
And if you listen back to the first songs that you started producing, then do you notice that there might be a little bit more drum rhythms in there?
No,
or?
not at all.
Okay.
No, that's not true. My first release, like ever, my first track I made was a #1 hit here in Holland. It was like a weird old Dutch song from the 30s, and I remixed it, and it went #1. So, but there was some live drums I did with my father. So yeah, there was drums in.
And then obviously this whole electronic music side comes into it. What did you hear or could you find in electronic music that you couldn't find in rock music or other stuff?
Partying.
Okay.
You know, like, of course, if you watch Foo Fighters, Rammstein, Limp Bizkit live on Pinkpop or big festivals, you have insane partying as well. But it's really different, you know. Like if I'm watching John Mayer or Dave Matthews Band, you're like standing and you move your head a little bit. And when I went to my first house party, I was like going mental, you know. And I was drunk and I was getting wasted, and it was amazing. So I was like, I want to make people feel like me right now. So, yeah, that was the reason.
And the way you experience the music yourself, but especially performing, is there a big difference for you between performing electronic music and performing drum set?
Yeah, I don't want to be like negative to DJing, but when I'm playing a drum set with my band like years ago for 60 minutes or 90 minutes, then I feel like a real musician, you know. And it's hard freaking work, you know. You're 90 minutes drumming, and it's physically pretty heavy. But if I'm DJing, it's important that you know what the crowd wants, but like physically it's not that hard. So I spend a lot of energy in my performance and emceeing myself, and yeah, I want the people standing in the crowd are like, who's this crazy fucker, you know? And I want to see him. If you don't see any LED screens, not CO2 cannons and stuff, I want to give a show as well. So now I try to put like I always put a lot of energy in my DJ sets as well, but the DJing itself isn't that hard, and I would never compare that to playing the drums or play guitar or piano.
And well, you start then making electronic music. Was there a moment, or maybe a song, when you thought, okay, I'm actually quite good at this?
With house music?
Yeah.
Even though if I finish a track now, I'm not like, oh, this is good.
Okay.
You know, I'm like really, how do you say it? Like pessimistic, or I would never say my stuff is good. You know, because if you can say that, you're not developing. You know, so I always try to make everything better. But the response of a crowd or a radio or anything like that gives you the feeling like, okay, it works, you know, so that gives me like some rest.
When you are producing then, when do you know that you're on the right direction, or that you have a...
If your response is positive from spinning. No, like, if I feel like, when I'm sitting in the studio and suddenly you have this drop and you are like, yeah, and you get this really little funny feeling in your stomach. When I was standing in the crowd, when I was going out, then I think I'm on the good track, you know. So I made a lot of tracks in the past that I felt like this is huge, and then I sent it to a label and they were like, yeah, and I sent it to another label, nah, and I was like, fuck, and I dropped it. And sometimes I send a track and I'm like, nah, and I send it, this is amazing, and it's so weird, you know.
And have you, in that way, surprised yourself with the song as well then? Or a track that you thought, well, this is never going to work, and now it's...
Yes, that's what I said. Like, sometimes you think, okay, this can work, I don't know, and you start to play it in clubs and festivals, and you see the crowd response, and you're like, okay, it's going pretty well, and the label wants it, and it's spinning, or then it gives you the ik weet niet meer wat ik moet zeggen. Ik kom niet op een woord dat ik te moe ben. Nee, and if you send it to a label and they are positive, I'm happy. So.
And well, in terms of the way electronic music is released these days, it's very much track for track and not necessarily an album. In that way, is there a lot of pressure? You say because you have to get the label to like it. Is there a lot of pressure?
Of course there's a lot of pressure, because every 14, 15-year-old boy with a laptop is a DJ, and they can make huge hits. So you have to stay relevant all the time. If I don't release a track for 2 years, everyone will forget, and my career is like kind of gone. So there is, of course, there is pressure, but I always try to keep in mind I want to have like the creative part like really high, and spend a lot of time in my show, so I keep relevant. But of course, there is pressure.
What do you think then separates you or your music from everything, like you say, everything that's out there?
Like, I always call it like rock and roll vibe in my songs, you know, and my melodies are kind of sing-along, and it doesn't really matter what kind of style I would make. I always try to make it Tony Jr.-ish with this rock and roll vibe. I cannot explain. It's about the way I freaking EQ and how dirty I make everything. So rock and roll. Okay.
Finally then, well, your latest track is called King Kong.
King Kong.
What was the start of that track?
It was an idea from Kura, and he sent it to me, and we started working on social media and in Skype, and we finished it. So he came with like this little idea, and I don't know why, but this small part, like demo, I was feeling like this King Kong vibe. I don't know why, and I was like, dude, we're gonna make it like a King Kong and like jungle-ish, and within 1 month it was King Kong, and we feel like King Kong.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Thank you.